Felt professionally insulted by the squirrel judging her breakfast. The squirrel sat 6 feet away on a branch, chewing a cone with the expression of a tiny landlord. It had already knocked one acorn into her coffee, stolen a dried cranberry, and looked deeply unimpressed by the finest camouflage tent a wildlife magazine could buy. Marin lifted her camera anyway. The squirrel froze. She whispered from behind the lens, "Relax. You are not the cover story." The squirrel flicked its tail as if it knew that already. Below the tree, the Rocky Mountain forest breathed in silver moonlight. Pines crowded the slope. Cold air moved through needles with a soft, combing sound. Somewhere beyond the creek, an owl asked the dark a question and received no useful answer. Marin shifted one knee inside the narrow tree blind. Her legs had gone stiff 2 hours ago. Her left shoulder ached from holding the long lens. A candy stick rested between her teeth because sugar helped her stay awake, and because no one had ever written a rule against looking ridiculous at altitude. She was waiting for wolves. Not ordinary wolves, though that was what the assignment file claimed. The magazine called them a rare silver-gray population seen on private conservation land outside the main park boundary. The editor wanted beauty, mystery, and wildness. The legal department wanted no trespassing lawsuit. The Conservation Trust wanted flattering coverage. Marin wanted the truth. For 3 days, the truth had been moving through her frame with paws too silent, eyes too clever, and a talent for good lighting that no honest wolf should possess. A shape passed between the pines. Marin stopped chewing the candy. The wolf that stepped into the moonlit clearing was enormous. Silver fur caught the light along its shoulders. Its head was lowered, but not in fear. Its pale eyes studied the tree line with the cold patience of a creature used to being obeyed by weather, elk, and most people with functioning survival instincts. There he was again, the impossible one. Marin did not press the shutter. Not yet. The wolf sniffed once. Her skin prickled. She had hidden her scent under wet bark, crushed fern, and a beta trick older than her grandmother's bad advice. Most wolves would have passed beneath her tree without knowing she existed. Human hikers had walked 20 yards from her blind that morning and complained about mosquitoes while she sat overhead eating a protein bar like a moss-covered gargoyle. This wolf was different. He turned his head toward the tree. Marin slowly lowered the camera. The wolf moved with no sound at all. He crossed the clearing, passed under her lowest rope line, and stopped beneath the blind. His nose lifted. Moonlight silvered the scars hidden under thick fur, his ears angled forward. Then he placed one enormous paw on the trunk. Marin sighed. That was rude. The wolf looked up. She leaned out of the blind just enough for him to see her face. The candy stick shifted to one corner of her mouth. Her camouflage hood was covered in pine needles. Her camera hung against her chest like an accusation. In the old wolf tongue, Marin spoke down to him with perfect calm. "Your Majesty, your alpha pressure is so loud it scared off my red-tailed hawk. Also, your left side is better for moonlight. Turn 30 degrees if you insist on being dramatic." The wolf went still, not alert, not threatening, offended. Marin had photographed snow leopards, nesting eagles, and one moose who tried to eat a tripod. She knew the difference between danger and wounded vanity. This was wounded vanity with fangs. The wolf's eyes narrowed. She lifted one hand. "Do not climb. This blind cost more than my truck." The wolf stared at the ropes, the canvas, the lens, and finally the candy in her mouth. Marin pulled it free and denied him the candy with unnecessary solemnity. The wolf's lip twitched. It should not have. Ordinary wolves did not understand candy denial. Marin smiled. "Good. We both know what you are." The forest seemed to hold its breath. Far down the slope, another wolf barked once. The silver wolf did not look away from her. His body remained still, but authority rolled from him in a hot, invisible wave. It pressed against the branches, against the blind, against Marin's ribs. She let it slide past. Beta wolves survived by learning which pressures to answer and which to ignore. Marin had spent her life being overlooked by alphas who thought quiet meant weak. She had turned being overlooked into an art form, then into a career with awards and invoices. The alpha below her had excellent bones, beautiful fur, and terrible manners. She raised the camera again. The wolf took one step back. Marin murmured, "That is better. Hold that." The shutter clicked once. The silver wolf's ears flattened. "Perfect," she said. "You look furious and commercially viable." The next sound came from her satellite phone. It buzzed against the floor of the blind with the enthusiasm of a beetle trapped in a tin cup. Marin glanced at the screen. Nadine Calder, senior editor, New York office. It was past midnight in the Rockies and much later in New York, which meant Nadine had either found caffeine or a new way to ruin peace. Marin answered in a whisper. Nadine's voice exploded into the tiny tent. "Tell me you got the wolf." The silver wolf below the tree jerked his head toward the sound. Marin covered the speaker too late. Marin told Nadine she had several wolves. No. The silver one. The one with the eyes. Marin, I opened your preview folder and nearly proposed to a wolf. Marin looked down. The wolf looked back. His ears lifted slowly. Nadine continued, reckless and delighted. That animal has the emotional range of a widowed duke. Why does it look like it is silently yearning across a ballroom? Marin bit the inside of her cheek. Below the tree, the wolf's tail went rigid. Marin blamed the light. It is not the light. I have been in publishing for 22 years. That wolf is in love with your camera. The silver wolf made a low sound. Marin coughed into her sleeve. I will send safer selects tomorrow. Safer? I want more of the tragic wolf prints. Marin's gaze dropped to the wolf again. He may be unavailable for additional modeling. Nadine did not hear the warning. Then make him available. Whatever you are doing out there, keep doing it. The call ended. For a moment, nothing moved except the squirrel. It leaned around the trunk, saw the giant wolf, and decided this entire evening was beneath its legal responsibilities. Marin looked down at the alpha. Tragic wolf prince is not my phrase. The wolf's eyes promised consequences. She lifted the camera strap over one shoulder. If you want to complain, come back in human form. I do not accept formal objections from animals who are blocking my hawk. The silver wolf stared at her for 3 more seconds. Then he stepped backward into the moonlight and turned his head exactly 30 degrees. He vanished between the pines with the stiff dignity of a king who had not meant to obey. Marin waited until the forest swallowed him. Then she pressed both hands over her mouth and laughed so hard the squirrel dropped its cone. By sunrise, Marin had 3 usable frames of the silver wolf, 2 blurry frames of his offended retreat, and 1 image of the squirrel that looked like a hostile witness. She backed up everything to 2 encrypted drives, 1 cloud folder, and a hidden card taped inside a packet of instant oatmeal. Experience had taught her that wild animals destroyed equipment by accident. Wealthy landowners did it on purpose. She climbed down at 6 with the slow care of a woman whose knees had filed for divorce. The forest smelled of damp needles, cold stone, and the sweet rot of old leaves. Morning light slid through the trees in gold ribbons. At the base of the pine stood a man. He was not the wolf, technically. He was worse. The man wore a dark canvas field jacket, black jeans, heavy boots, and a face so controlled it could have been carved into the entrance of a courthouse. His hair was dark brown, nearly black, and clipped short enough to suggest discipline rather than style. His eyes were the same pale, severe gray Marin had seen under moonlight. His human scent was wrapped in cedar smoke, mountain air, and expensive restraint. He held one of her trail cameras in his hand. Marin adjusted the strap across her chest. Good morning. If you are here to return that, I prefer apologies with coffee. The man's gaze moved over her camouflage jacket, mud-streaked pants, camera harness, and pine needles. You are Marin Larkspur. Marin reminded him that he was touching her equipment. You are trespassing on protected private land. Marin took out a folded permit from the waterproof pocket at her hip. She had expected this conversation eventually. She had not expected it with the wolf prince before breakfast, but the wilderness loved variety. Black Pine Conservation Trust issued field access for a magazine feature on gray wolf recovery, raptor nesting, and high-elevation habitat, she said. Marin Larkspur, lead photographer. 3-week window. Non-invasive methods only. He did not take the paper. That permit covers the outer corridor, he said. It covers the corridor, Creek Basin, North Ridge, and all marked observation zones. This tree is not marked. Marin defended the tree as emotionally available. His eyes sharpened. Marin smiled the smile she used on park officers, angry ranchers, and editors who wanted baby animal photos during migration season. And before you ask, I do not bait wildlife, trap wildlife, touch wildlife, chase wildlife, or post coordinates. I also do not appreciate people removing my cameras. The man held the trail camera a little higher. It was aimed at a private den route. It was aimed at a game trail. It was aimed at my family. There it was. Not a confession, not exactly, but close enough to taste. Marin let her expression settle. Then your family should stop using game trails with dramatic backlighting. The man's jaw flexed. He was magnificent in the least convenient way. As a wolf, he had looked like moonlight had been invented for him. As a man, he looked like he signed legal threats in fountain pen. Marin had no patience for either, which was unfortunate because her camera adored him. He introduced himself as Torin Ashgard. The surname landed with weight. Ashgard was the name behind the private land, the Conservation Trust, and several foundations that appeared on donor walls across the state. Old money. Older wolves, if Marin's nose was right. Marin guessed that he managed the land. Torin corrected her. He protected it. Marin asked if photographers were the threat. Torin said exposure was the threat. The word carried more than its human meaning. Marin heard the wolf inside it. Exposure meant maps, hunters, drones, gossip, too many boots on sacred ground. It meant strangers with lenses and no sense of silence. She could respect that. She could also refuse to be bullied before coffee. Mr. Ashgard, she said, your trust approved the assignment. My public outreach director approved an outer corridor feature. You crossed into a core protection zone. Marin told him his signs were terrible. For the first time, something like disbelief moved across his face. My signs are carved cedar posts with reflective markers. Yes, very tasteful, almost invisible at dawn, excellent for a secretive wolf monarchy, poor for compliance. His gaze dropped to the candy stick tucked behind her ear. He knew she had recognized what he was. You climbed under my tree in wolf form and judged my lens. I made deductions. He noted that she spoke the old tongue. My grandmother liked tradition and threats. He identified her as Beta. That is usually how scent works. He studied her again, but this time with attention sharpened by irritation and reluctant interest. Marin felt the press of his alpha nature testing the air around her. Not a command. Not yet. More like a hand hovering near a closed door. She did not open it. Torin noticed. He admitted that she hid well. Thank you. You announce yourself like a brass band falling down a mountain. A bird called from the ridge. In the silence afterward, Marin heard the faintest huff of amusement from somewhere uphill. Another wolf, hidden. Torin's eyes flicked that way, and the huff stopped. Good. Audience. Marin reclaimed her trail camera from his hand. He let her take it, but only because keeping it would have proved her point about him being dramatic. You will delete every image of my wolves, he said. Marin refused. The forest cooled. Marin lifted one finger before he could become theatrical. I will delete anything that exposes your people, your den routes, or the exact location of your core territory. I will not delete legitimate wildlife images unless they are unsafe. Torin warned her that she did not decide what was safe here. Marin warned him that neither did a man who tried to steal a camera from a tree and accidentally became the best photo in the folder. Torin's expression hardened. Marin took pity on his dignity, but only a little. The dangerous files are backed up. If you smash this camera, Nadine in New York will ask why the tragic wolf prince vanished. Then she will send a video crew. Possibly 2. One of them will wear cologne. That did it. Torin went still in the way of predators who had found the actual cliff edge. Torin repeated the words video crew as if they were a disease. with drones, assistants, location scouts, and someone named Chad who says he respects nature while stepping on it. The hidden wolf uphill made a faint choking sound. Torin did not look away from Marin. He accused her of threatening him. Marin called it a description of publishing. Torin saw no difference. Marin admitted that was often true. The corner of his mouth almost moved. He stopped it before it became human. Marin zipped the trail camera into her pack and told him his best option was cooperation. My best option is escorting you to the property line. Then the trust asks why. Nadine asks why. The magazine's legal department asks why. The answer becomes interesting, and interesting answers attract people. Torin hated that she was right. She could smell it, sharp and smoky under the cedar. He looked toward the ridge. The unseen wolf waited. The forest waited. Even the squirrel in Marin's tree seemed to lean closer. Finally, Torin spoke with the grim tone of a man signing his own inconvenience. I will act as your land representative. Marin blinked at the title. Torin defined the role as guide, safety monitor, and boundary authority. Marin translated that as babysitter. I mean, the only reason you will not accidentally photograph something you cannot publish. She considered him. He considered the camera. Both of them understood the deal. He could not simply force her out without drawing attention. She could not finish the assignment safely without someone who knew the real boundaries. His pride disliked this. Her schedule loved it. Marin held out her tripod. Torin stared at it. Marin said land representatives carried equipment. Torin refused. Boundary authorities carry equipment with authority. The hidden wolf uphill made a sound that was definitely laughter. Torin took the tripod. Marin smiled. Excellent. Try not to look tragic. It confuses my editor. For the next 2 days, Torin Ashgard followed Marin through his own forest like a storm cloud assigned to clerical work. He wore a charcoal cap pulled low and carried her tripod with the posture of a man holding a spear. He corrected her route every time she stepped near a true pack path. Marin let him, mostly. At dawn, she knelt beside a patch of frost-dusted grass to photograph elk tracks. Torin stood over her shoulder, silent and disapproving. You are breathing judgment on my neck, she said. You are facing east. The herd moved west. Marin told him she was photographing the tracks. Torin reminded her that the elk were west. Marin decided the tracks were prettier. He looked down at the prints as if they had failed an exam. She adjusted the lens. You may be an excellent alpha, but you are an impatient assistant. Torin denied being her assistant. Of course, you are my land representative with emotional objections. A raven croaked overhead. Marin took the picture. Torin's shadow fell across the frame. She lowered the camera and waited. He did not move. Your Majesty, she said softly, your royal gloom is blocking the hoof print. Torin stepped aside. He did it without thinking. Then he realized. Marin took the picture before he could reclaim the shadow. The day grew warmer. Pine sap brightened in the sun. The creek flashed between stones. Marin moved with the careful economy of a person trained to vanish. Her scent stayed tucked close to her skin, folded under fern and cold air. Torin watched her with increasing irritation. At midday, he lost her. That was the best part of Tuesday. Marin had crouched in a thicket to photograph a fox kit near a fallen log. She stilled her breath, dimmed her presence, and let the forest cover her. The fox kit emerged, all ears and poor decisions. She captured 6 frames before a twig snapped behind her. Torin was not there. She took 8 more frames. A blue jay scolded. 10 minutes later, Torin appeared on the wrong side of the thicket, with mud on one boot and fury under his cheekbones. Marin did not lower the camera while asking if he had lost something. Torin said she had disappeared. That is the point of camouflage. He added that she had been beside him. Now I am beside a fox. The fox kit sneezed. Torin looked personally betrayed by wildlife. Marin whispered, If you scare him, I will make you apologize to the magazine's readers. Torin froze. The fox kit stared at him, decided he was a poorly shaped tree, and climbed onto the log. Marin captured the moment. The shutter clicked like tiny applause. Torin did not breathe for 30 seconds. When the fox vanished, Marin stood and brushed pine needles from her knees. Marin told him he had done well. Torin pointed out that all he had done was stand still. Marin considered that more than many alphas could manage. His eyes cut to her. She slipped the camera strap over her shoulder. That was a compliment. It sounded like a controlled insult. Those are my specialty. He looked away, but not before she caught the tiny reluctant warmth in his face. By Wednesday, he had learned where to stand. Not always, but sometimes. He still loomed in the wrong places. He still frightened small animals by existing with too much command. Once, he stepped onto a perfect patch of wildflowers right before Marin could shoot a hummingbird moth. She gave him a look so flat that his ears would have gone back if he had been in wolf form. Torin said he had not seen it. Marin reminded him that it had been bright green. Torin replied that the forest was green. Marin added that it had wings. Torin observed that many things did. She stared. He moved off the flowers. They developed rules. Torin could warn her away from real pack routes. Marin could ignore him when he objected to harmless angles. Torin could inspect photos that showed wolves. Marin could refuse to delete a photo until he gave a specific safety reason. Neither of them could touch the other's equipment without permission. Torin added that the last rule included his wolves. Marin asked when she had touched a wolf. He mentioned the brush. She had indeed thrown a brush at him on Wednesday evening. That had been his fault. The light had been perfect. Amber sun slipped across a high granite shelf. Torin had shifted into wolf form to demonstrate a safe boundary path, though Marin suspected he had mostly wanted to remind her that he could be impressive. The silver wolf stood against the sky with wind lifting his fur and dignity glowing from every line of him. Marin raised the camera. Then she lowered it. The wolf turned his head. Marin told him no. His ears lifted. She dug into her pack, pulled out a compact grooming brush, and tossed it onto the rock. It landed by his front paws. You are shedding on the left shoulder? The wolf stared at the brush. I am not fixing that in post, she added. The wolf looked at Torin's cousin, a russet wolf hidden near the trees. The cousin looked at the sky, pretending to be spiritually elsewhere. Marin folded her arms. Brush first, tragic prints later. Torin shifted behind a screen of boulders and returned in human form with his jacket zipped high. The brush was in his hand. His expression could have chilled soup. Torin announced that he was not grooming himself for a magazine. Marin corrected him with professional calm. He was not grooming. He was removing seasonal distractions. Torin objected to having his fur described as seasonal distraction. Marin considered his shoulder again and decided it was currently a small weather event. The russet wolf made a coughing bark. Torin pointed at him. The cousin immediately became fascinated by a bush. Marin picked up the camera. If it helps, your left profile remains excellent. Torin said it did not help. Marin reminded him that it had helped yesterday. Yesterday, I was not being handed a brush. Marin informed him that growth was uncomfortable. Torin took one long breath. Then he disappeared behind the boulder again. Marin heard fabric, a low growl, and the unmistakable sound of a large wolf dragging a brush through thick fur with immense resentment. When he returned in wolf form, the left shoulder was perfect. Marin photographed him in the amber light. Every frame looked like Myth had stopped on a rock and glared at her. That night, Nadine called again. Marin sat on a fallen log near camp, boots stretched toward a small legal stove. Torin stood a few yards away, pretending to examine a trail map. He was listening. Of course he was listening. Alphas listened to everything except instructions they disliked. Nadine's voice crackled through the satellite phone. I need to talk about the silver wolf. Torin's shoulders went rigid. Marin stirred noodles in a tin cup. Good evening to you too. Marin, the new images are obscene. Torin turned. Marin coughed and reminded Nadine that they were wildlife photographs. They are emotionally obscene. That wolf is standing on a ridge like he has sworn revenge and written poetry about it. Marin looked at Torin. Torin mouthed no. She smiled into the phone. The public likes charisma. This is beyond charisma. Why does he look like he knows your coffee order and disapproves of other men? Torin's cap shifted. Marin's eyes dropped to it. Under the brim, something moved. Not human ears. Wolf ears, tiny, silver gray, and betraying him completely. Marin pressed her lips together until her face hurt. Nadine continued, I want a feature spread, the Silver King of Blackpine. Maybe a short video, maybe a behind-the-scenes crew. Torin's ears vanished under the cap with such speed that it became a small miracle. Marin stopped smiling. Marin refused the crew. Nadine paused and asked why. The terrain is fragile. The wolves are sensitive. Too many people will alter behavior. Nadine tried asking for one assistant. Marin looked at Torin, who mouthed no crew with the intensity of a man trying to stop an avalanche by glaring. No outside crew, Marin said. If you send people, you lose the wolves. Nadine huffed. Papers rustled. Somewhere in New York, a keyboard clacked. Fine, but I need more of him. Torin closed his eyes. The silver wolf is not a model, Marin said. Nadine laughed. Then why does he keep serving cover energy? Marin ended the call before Torin could take the phone and declare war on publishing. The creek whispered in the dark. The stove hissed. Torin stood in the blue evening with his jaw tight. Marin repeated the phrase, cover energy. Torin told her not to continue. Marin informed him that his ears had been visible. Torin denied it. Marin said they had been discussing poetry. He looked like he might walk into the creek. Marin set the noodles aside. The joke faded, but the warmth remained. The crew request is the real problem. Yes. Nadine will push again. Torin said the project ended now. Marin refused that too. His eyes flashed. Marin held up one hand. If I vanish from the project, the magazine sends a replacement. If my files vanish, they send legal questions. If the silver wolf vanishes, Nadine builds a religion around him. Torin's mouth tightened. But if I finish the feature, she continued, I can control what they see. Torin accused her of editing the truth. I mean, protect the truth from people who cannot carry it. That stopped him. Marin looked toward the dark trees. The forest smelled of damp bark, warm noodles, and the cold mineral scent rising from the creek. Hidden beyond the ridge were dens, families, routes, and rules older than fences. She had known from the first night that the wolves were not ordinary. She had not known whether they were guarding the land or hiding behind it. She was learning. Torin watched her and asked why she was really there. The question had been waiting since the tree. Marin rested her elbows on her knees. The magazine wanted rare wolves. I wanted to know why the black pine recovery numbers made no sense. Torin realized she had investigated them. Marin corrected him. She had investigated the land. Torin called that a careful distinction. Marin said she was a careful person. His gaze stayed on her face. No alpha pressure this time, only attention, sharper than any command. Marin continued. Every public report showed healthier habitat than surrounding zones. More elk, more raptors, less illegal trapping, fewer wildfire scars. Someone was managing this forest better than any agency file admitted. Torin understood that she had suspected wolves. I suspected either wolves or a very disciplined conservation staff with night vision. His expression did not soften, but something in it shifted. Torin concluded that the photographs had been bait. No, the photographs were proof. I needed to know whether your people were protecting the ecosystem or using the Conservation Trust as cover for something worse. The russet wolf was not nearby tonight. No hidden cousin laughed. The forest gave them privacy. Torin's voice lowered when he asked what she had decided. Marin looked at his hands. Strong hands. Human hands. Hands that had carried her tripod, stolen her camera, and stopped her from stepping onto a den route without touching her. I have decided you are terrible at standing in the right place, she said. His eyes narrowed. And very good at protecting what is yours, she added. The silence that followed was not hostile. It was large and careful. Torin looked toward the ridge and said she should have told him. You tried to steal my camera. Torin reminded her that she had photographed his left profile. Marin defended it as artistic restraint. Torin reminded her that she had called him commercially viable. Marin maintained that he had been. He looked back at her, and this time the reluctant smile did not quite disappear before she saw it. That became the first turn in the trail. The second turn arrived wearing a neon windbreaker and carrying a drone case. Marin spotted the man from half a mile away because the windbreaker was the color of panic. He stood near the Eastern Service Gate with two-day hikers, a folding map, and the confidence of someone who believed public land began wherever his phone signal ended. A compact drone sat on the gravel beside his boot. Torin saw him at the same time. The change in the Alpha was immediate. His shoulders settled, his face cooled. Even the forest seemed to notice and lower its volume. A jay stopped scolding from a nearby pine, then wisely resumed at a softer pitch. Marin touched Torin's sleeve before he could become a weather event. He looked down at her hand. She removed it slowly because they were not there yet, and because she had no interest in using accidental contact as a leash. Still, the brief interruption worked. His attention returned from the drone to her. Marin reminded him that a man with a drone was not automatically an invasion force. Torin's expression suggested she had never met men with drones. She had, unfortunately. They came in several species. The harmless ones wanted waterfalls. The irritating ones wanted elk. The dangerous ones wanted anything they had been told not to film. The neon man had not yet declared his subspecies. Torin started down the slope. Marin followed, adjusting her cap and letting her scent fold into the dry grass. She could have vanished completely, but that would have left Torin alone with strangers and a rising blood pressure. Instead, she stayed visible enough to become a witness, professional enough to become a shield, and quiet enough to become useful. The neon man introduced himself as Bryce, a travel vlogger. He had found the gate through a social post from a hiker who had no business posting it. Bryce explained that he was capturing aerial footage of untouched wolf country for a channel that apparently confused respect with background music. Torin's silence became glacial. Marin stepped into the conversation before the glacier acquired teeth. She showed Bryce the public access map, the no-drone language, the nesting raptor notice, and the federal fine schedule. She did it pleasantly. Pleasantness, in her experience, made warnings harder to argue with. She also mentioned that the Conservation Trust monitored unauthorized flight activity and that drone footage could trigger a legal request from the magazine's partner council. This was not entirely true. It was true enough to make Bryce look at the drones with sudden grief. One of the hikers apologized. The other asked if there were really wolves. Torin's jaw flexed. Marin answered that the area supported sensitive wildlife and that the best way to see nature was to stop trying to chase it. The hiker accepted this with the soft disappointment of a man denied a monster story. Bryce packed the drone. Torin watched every zipper close. Marin took a few photographs of the gate after the visitors left, not for the magazine, for Torin. She captured the weak signage, the reflective markers half hidden by branches, and the social trail that had formed beside the fence. The real threat had not been Bryce. It was the way the human world kept finding loose threads. Torin stood beside her while she reviewed the images. He did not thank her, not directly. Instead, he admitted that the signs could be improved. For Torin, this was an area. Marin suggested less tasteful cedar and more obvious warnings. He looked pained by the attack on aesthetics. She recommended a sign that did not look like it had been commissioned by a secret society with excellent typography. His cousin, the russet wolf in human form now, laughed from the service road. Torin informed him that he was free to redesign the entire eastern boundary if he found it amusing. The cousin stopped laughing. Marin photographed that too, privately, because few things in life were as satisfying as accountability with boots on. The drone incident gave her another layer of the story. The forest did not need to be exposed to be valued. It needed better edges, better language, better guardians who understood that secrecy alone was not a wall. Torin, had guarded Black Pine like a wolf at a den mouth. Marin began to see how exhausting that had been. It was easier to bare teeth than to write policy. It was funnier too, but less effective against vloggers. That evening, Torin showed her the old boundary cabin where the pack stored trail signs, emergency blankets, and enough old maps to wallpaper a courtroom. The cabin smelled of dust, cedar, mice, and bureaucracy. Marin sneezed twice. Torin pretended not to notice. She pretended not to notice him pretending. They spent 2 hours revising boundary language. This should have been boring. Somehow, with Torin, even sign text became a duel. He wanted the signs to say entry discouraged beyond this point. Marin argued that discouraged sounded like a suggestion from a shy librarian. He wanted to mention ecological sensitivity. She insisted that people who ignored gates did not fear sensitivity. He finally wrote no drone flight, no off-trail entry, monitored conservation zone, fines enforced. Marin gave it a passing grade. Torin looked offended by passing. She added a gold star sticker from her field notebook to the draft. He stared at the sticker for a long time. The russet cousin took one look through the cabin window and walked away before Torin could assign him more signage. The third turn in the trail came with a porcupine. It was, in Marin's professional opinion, a deeply unreasonable porcupine. It appeared near camp at dawn with the round confidence of a creature made of needles and bad choices. It climbed onto a fallen log, sat in the middle of the best light, and began chewing bark with theatrical indifference. Marin loved it at once. Torin did not. The porcupine occupied the exact route Torin wanted to use for their morning survey. When Torin attempted to guide Marin around it, the porcupine shifted 3 inches and somehow blocked more of the world. Torin tried a low growl. The porcupine kept chewing. Torin tried a sharper sound in the old tongue, one that probably made wolves sit straighter and young pack members reconsider their lives. The porcupine scratched its belly. Marin nearly dropped the camera. Torin looked at her. She became very interested in adjusting exposure. The porcupine stayed for 40 minutes. Those 40 minutes turned into some of the best small wildlife photographs of the assignment. Morning light touched each quill. Frost melted on the log. The animal looked ancient, comical, and mildly employed. Torin stood behind Marin with the tripod, defeated by a creature that resembled a suspicious pine cone. Marin did not mock him aloud. That would have been unkind. She named the file series Alpha Negotiations, though. Later, when Torin reviewed the images, he paused at the best porcupine frame. He admitted it had presence. Marin told him the porcupine had command. He closed the tablet. The joke should have ended there. It did not. The porcupine returned 3 more times that week. It appeared near the creek when Marin photographed dippers. It appeared beside the trail when Torin explained wind direction. It appeared once outside the boundary cabin and sat beneath the new draft signage like an unpaid consultant. Marin began to suspect it knew. Torin began referring to it as the inspector, which was the first sign that the forest was winning him back from his own seriousness. Comedy like that mattered. It kept the story from becoming only secrecy and risk. It also showed Marin something she had not expected. Torin could be annoyed without being cruel. He could be powerful without needing every creature to yield. He let the porcupine have the trail. He let the fox kit have the log. He let Marin have arguments when he could have ended them with rank. The old alphas Marin knew had treated patience as weakness. Torin treated it as a tool he disliked but respected. That was dangerous. Not because she feared him, because she did not. The 4th turn came in rain. Mountain rain did not fall politely. It arrived at mid-afternoon with a cold wind and a sky like bruised slate. Marin had climbed halfway up a narrow game shelf to photograph mountain goats across the basin. Torin objected to the location before the first drop fell. He objected to the shale, the angle, the exposed roots, the incoming weather, and the way Marin trusted boots more than physics. She told him physics had been very supportive so far. Then the rain turned the shale slick. Physics changed its position. Marin slipped while descending, not far and not dramatically. It was the kind of fall that bruised pride before bone. Her boots slid, her knee struck wet rock, and her camera swung hard against her harness. Torin moved faster than thought, catching the back of her pack before she could slide into the brush. For 1 second, she hung in a ridiculous crouch, rain dripping from her hood, one hand full of mud, the other clamped over the camera. Torin did not haul her against him. He did not make the moment larger than it was. He anchored her until she found her footing, then released the pack as soon as she was stable. That restraint again. Marin hated how much she noticed it. They made it to a shallow rock overhang while the rain hammered the pines. Water ran in silver threads over the stone, the air filled with wet mineral scent, crushed fern, and the musk of hidden animals waiting out weather. Marin checked the camera first. Torin checked her knee. She told him the camera was fine. He told her the camera could wait, not with a roar, not with command. Quietly, in a voice that belonged more to a man than an alpha. She let him look. The knee was scraped, not serious. He cleaned it with water from his canteen and a field cloth from his pack. His hands were steady, warm despite the rain, and careful in a way that made jokes harder. So Marin made one anyway. She informed him that this did not qualify as dramatic rescue footage. Torin said he was devastated. She accused him of sounding relieved. He admitted nothing. They waited under the overhang for nearly an hour. Rain softened the world into layers of sound. Marin photographed water on pine needles, dark lichen, and Torin's hand resting near his boot, not quite touching hers. It was not a romantic photograph. It was not even usable for the magazine. It felt true. When the rain eased, Torin insisted on carrying the heavier pack. Marin argued. He did not pull rank. He simply pointed out that her knee would stiffen before camp. If she fell again, he would be forced to explain to Nadine that her lead photographer had been defeated by a slope. Marin surrendered the pack to avoid giving Nadine material. The walk back was slow. Torin matched her pace without comment. That was more intimate than carrying her would have been. By camp, the porcupine was under the supply tarp. Torin stopped in the rain and stared. Marin leaned on a trekking pole, soaked and aching. The porcupine blinked from beside the dry food crate. After everything else, that broke her. She laughed until her knee hurt. Torin looked at the porcupine, then at the sky, then at Marin. His mouth moved. The smile was small, but it existed. The inspector stayed dry. Everyone else did not. That night, Marin sent Nadine a safe batch of rain images. Nadine replied with 14 heart emojis and one message asking if the silver wolf looked noble when wet. Marin did not show Torin. She did, however, save the message for emergencies. The fifth turn was quieter. It happened when Marin finally met some of Torin's people in human form. He did not call it an introduction. He called it a necessary review of land use boundaries with trusted residents. Marin let the phrase pass because she had learned that Torin used boring language when feelings were too near the trail. They gathered outside the boundary cabin in late afternoon. There were 6 of them. The group included the russet cousin and 2 older women with sharp eyes. There was also a broad-shouldered man who smelled like river stones and a young woman carrying a toddler on one hip. Marin stayed still as their attention moved over her. No one threatened. That was something. No one trusted either. That was fair. Marin explained the revised photo plan. She showed examples on the tablet. No den routes, no faces in human form, no transformation evidence, no identifiable pack gathering places. She explained metadata stripping, delayed publication, and location masking. She explained that the magazine would receive only approved files for wolf imagery and that ecological context would carry the feature. The older women asked the hardest questions. Good. Marin preferred hard questions to polite fear. They wanted to know what stopped her editor from demanding more. They wanted to know how cloud backups worked. They wanted to know whether a distant wolf silhouette could be enlarged. They wanted to know if Marin had already taken images that should not exist. She answered all of it. When they asked about dangerous images, she described the deletion in front of Torin without making it sound noble. She had taken something she should not keep. Then she had removed it. That was not heroism. It was correction. The woman with the toddler watched Torin while Marin said this. The toddler chewed the edge of a leaf and looked bored by ethics. Torin did not speak for Marin. He stood beside the cabin door, arms folded, face unreadable. But each time someone tried to shift the conversation from Marin's choices to his authority, he redirected them back to her. That mattered too. The pack did not accept her at once. Real trust did not work that way. and the story would have felt false if it did. But by the end of the meeting, the older women agreed to review the final wolf-adjacent selects. The Riverstone man offered to repair the eastern gate latch. The young mother asked whether Marin had any photographs of fox kits because her toddler liked foxes. Marin showed her. The toddler tried to lick the tablet. Torin looked deeply alarmed. Marin told him toddlers were like that. He said pack pups had better screen discipline. The young mother laughed so hard the toddler dropped the leaf. After the meeting, Torin walked Marin back through the pines. The late light turned the trunks copper. Their boots made soft sounds on damp earth. She expected him to ask what she thought of the pack. Instead, he asked if the questions had been unfair. She told him they had been necessary. He nodded. Then he asked if the toddler had damaged the tablet. Marin told him the tablet had survived worse than one leaf-flavored child. He looked unconvinced. That was when she realized he had been nervous. Not about policy, not about files, about her meeting his people and finding them too wary, too strange, too much. The great anti-surveillance alpha had been worried that his family might scare off a beta woman who once told him to brush his shoulder fur. The discovery made her chest ache. She did not point it out. Some truths needed shade. Instead, she told him his pack had excellent questions and terrible tablet etiquette. He accepted this as praise. The sixth turn was the almost kiss that did not happen. Marin was reviewing night sounds for a multimedia caption, though she had already told Nadine no video and no audio that could map a den route. She sat on a log with headphones around her neck, listening to wind through spruce and the distant bark of a fox. Torin sat nearby, sharpening a pencil with a pocket knife because apparently even his stationery had survival training. The camp stove ticked as it cooled. Stars gathered overhead. The porcupine inspector rustled somewhere near the tarp. Marin removed the headphones and found Torin watching her. Not the camera, not the files. Her. Neither of them joked for once. He set the pencil down. She knew he was going to ask before he moved. That was the strange gift he kept giving her. No claiming, no sudden alpha certainty, just a pause, an opening, a choice. Then, the satellite phone rang. Nadine's name flashed on the screen. Marin let her eyes close while the phone kept buzzing. Torin leaned back with the expression of a man adding editors to the list of natural predators. Marin answered, because if she did not, Nadine would keep calling until the elk filed complaints. Nadine had received the fox kit images. She wanted to know if the fox could be part of the cover package. She also wanted to know whether the silver wolf had been seen near the fox, because readers loved interspecies emotional resonance. Torin stood up and walked into the dark. Marin watched him go, shoulders shaking with silent laughter. When she found him 10 minutes later, he was by the creek, looking at the water as if it had personally interrupted him. Moonlight traced his profile. He did not turn when she approached, but he knew she was there. He always knew now, even when he pretended not to. Marin told him Nadine had been neutralized. He asked if neutralized meant placed in a sealed container. She said only emotionally. The almost kiss remained between them, not awkward, not lost, deferred. Like a photograph not taken because the light was not honest yet. That patience became its own kind of heat. The next morning, Torin took her somewhere beautiful and safe. He did not announce it as trust. Alphas rarely announced vulnerability when they could disguise it as logistics. He simply arrived at camp before dawn with coffee in a metal flask, handed Marin a sealed map, and told her the South Ridge had better light. The South Ridge was not on her permit map. It overlooked a basin where mist pooled between pines. Elk moved like shadows through the pale grass. A golden eagle circled the far cliffs. No den paths crossed the viewpoint. No pack homes could be identified. It was everything the magazine needed and nothing it should not have. Marin stood beside her tripod, breathing in cold air and coffee. "This is a gift," she said. Torin adjusted the strap of his field pack. "This is a controlled location. A gift wearing a tactical vest. Call it what you like. I will call it your good side." He glanced at her. She smiled into the viewfinder. The land's good side, obviously. He muttered something in the old tongue about beta women and selective mercy. Marin heard every word. The work changed after that. It did not become easy. Torin still inspected wolf images with the suspicion of a king examining enemy treaties. Marin still argued over every safe frame. But the center of the argument moved. They were no longer fighting over whether she should be there. They were fighting over how to tell the truth without handing it to fools. That distinction mattered. Comedy remained their preferred language. When Marin hid in a blind near a beaver pond, Torin lost her again. This time he found her only because she sneezed after inhaling cattail fluff. His relief was so visible that she pretended not to see it. "Your anti-tracking skills are inconvenient," he told her. Marin said that was the point. Torin clarified that it was meant for enemies. Marin added overconfident land representatives to the list. He crouched beside her and watched a beaver slap the water. "That animal is mocking me." Marin suspected most animals were mocking him. Torin accused her of encouraging them. Marin called it mentoring talent. At noon, she photographed him carrying her collapsed blind across a creek. He did not notice until she showed him the frame. In it, Torin stood knee-deep in water, jaw set, gear over one shoulder, looking like a wilderness hero punished by fabric. Torin told her to delete it. Marin refused. Torin argued that it had no ecological value. Marin argued that it had emotional range. Torin banned the phrase. Marin predicted Nadine would love it. His eyes went very still when he said her name. She tucked the camera away. "Fine. It goes into my private folder." Torin noted that containment was not deletion. Marin called it containment. Torin warned that containment failed. Marin trusted proper labels. He stared at her for so long the beaver slapped the water again. Marin nodded toward the pond. "He agrees with me." The beaver became Torin's enemy for the rest of the day. On Friday, the humor came from wildflowers. Marin needed a macro shot of alpine blooms with a blurred wolf silhouette in the background. It was a safe image, symbolic but not revealing. Torin objected to being blurred. Marin explained that the wolf was atmosphere. Torin objected to being atmosphere. Marin decided that in this frame, he was. "I am alpha of this territory. Today, you are a tasteful gray shape behind flowers." He stood on the ridge in wolf form for the shot, silver tail flicking with royal irritation. Each time he shifted position, the flowers moved. Each time the flowers moved, Marin lowered the camera and waited. After the fourth attempt, Torin's cousin in russet wolf form lay down behind a rock and covered his muzzle with both paws. Marin adjusted the focus ring and told him to hold still. The silver wolf held still. A butterfly landed on his nose. He went cross-eyed. Marin pressed the shutter in a burst. The russet cousin rolled behind the rock in silent laughter. Torin did not move until the butterfly left. His discipline was absolute. His dignity was gone. When he shifted back behind the ridge, he returned in human form with grass in his hair and murder in his eyes. "That image will never leave your possession," he said. Marin asked which one. Torin said she knew exactly which one. "The one where the butterfly chose diplomacy?" Torin said her name in warning. She smiled sweetly and promised it would stay in the private folder. He looked toward the sky as if asking the moon goddess for patience. That evening, Nadine called again. Marin almost did not answer. Then she saw Torin's ears twitch beneath his cap before the phone even rang, and answered out of spite. Nadine skipped greetings. "We need to discuss the emotional wolf." Torin walked away. Marin put the phone on speaker. Torin stopped walking. Nadine said, "The board wants a cover package. The Silver Wolf, the recovery story, a sidebar about private conservation, maybe a digital mini documentary." Marin watched Torin's shoulders become granite. Marin refused the documentary. "What if we send a very small crew?" Marin refused. Nadine tried asking about a drone operator. Torin turned around with the expression of a man hearing sacrilege. Marin pinched the bridge of her nose. "Absolutely no drones." "Marin, are you protecting the wolves or dating them?" The mountain went silent. Torin's face changed. Not by much. A blink, a stilling around the mouth. But Marin saw it. She felt heat climb her throat. Marin said she was protecting the assignment. "Because if this silver wolf is single, the internet will not be." Marin ended the call. Torin looked at the phone, then at her. Torin repeated the phrase dating them. Marin blamed the criminal phrasing on editors. Torin declared that the wolves were not available. Marin promised to inform the internet. Torin told her to do that. She slipped the phone into her pocket. Should I mention the butterfly? He pointed toward camp and told her to walk. Marin laughed the whole way down the ridge. The laughter helped until it did not. That night, the wind turned colder. Clouds covered the moon. Marin sat near her tent with a blanket around her shoulders and reviewed images on her tablet. Torin stood near the fire line, hands in his jacket pockets, watching the dark. She had hundreds of safe frames now. Elk in mist, eagle over cliff, fox kid on log, beaver pond at dusk, wolf silhouettes far enough away to be only wildness and suggestion. The project could work. Then she opened a hidden folder. The dangerous images waited there. Torin in wolf form below her tree, eyes lifted. Torin in moonlight, left side turned. Torin in the creek, shaking water from silver fir. Torin on the ridge, not looking at the camera, but at her. That last image hurt. Nadine had called it deep emotion because editors loved words that sold covers. But it was not performance. It was not even wolf mystery. It was the moment Torin had stopped watching the lens and started watching Marin's hands, her breath, the quiet way she waited for the forest to offer permission. The image did not expose a den route, it exposed him. Torin came closer. That is one of the files I want removed. Marin did not look up. She knew. Torin asked why she kept it. She tapped the dark edge of the tablet. Because it is the best portrait I have ever made. Torin reminded her that portraits required consent. The words were calm. That made them worse. Marin shut her eyes for a moment. He was right, not legally, not by wildlife rules, but morally, in the place where her wolf instincts and her professional pride had been wrestling since the first night. Marin said again that she knew. Torin lowered himself onto the log across from her. The fire popped softly between them. Smoke drifted upward, carrying pine and cold ash into the dark. You did not know me when you took it, he said. Marin admitted she had not. Torin reminded her that now she did. The tablet warmed her palm. She thought of all the years she had hidden in brush, trees, blinds, and rooms full of louder wolves. Beta meant useful, quiet, adaptable. Beta meant not chosen first unless someone needed a bridge, a witness, or a person who could vanish. Photography had been the one place where invisibility became power. If no one saw her, she could see everything. But seeing was not the same as taking. Marin opened the file menu. Torin did not move. She deleted the image from the tablet. Then she connected the first backup drive and deleted it there too. The second drive followed. Last came the cloud folder, slow under the satellite connection. The progress wheel spun while the fire cracked. When it finished, the space where the image had been felt almost physical. Torin's voice was rougher when he spoke. You did not have to do that in front of me. Marin said she did have to do it in front of him. Torin asked why. Marin knew he would wonder otherwise. The wind moved through the pines. Torin looked at her for a long time, and this time his attention did not feel like pressure. It felt like shelter held at a respectful distance. You wanted to know if I was worthy of protecting this land, he said. Torin understood. Then Torin turned the question back on her. Marin smiled a little. I am still under review. Torin rejected that with one soft word. The single word was soft. She looked up. Torin's face in firelight was not cold. It was tired, honest, and still too beautiful for a man who had once been defeated by a butterfly. You are not under review, he said. You are the first person outside my pack who saw the truth and chose restraint before I forced it. Marin reminded him that he could not force it. Torin knew that mattered. He did not say it with anger. He said it with recognition. Marin had been resisting alpha pressure her whole life. He had finally stopped offering it. I was afraid of being seen, Torin said. Marin had noticed. You were afraid of never being seen. The words found a place under her ribs and pressed. Marin looked away toward the dark basin. Beta wolves are useful when unseen. That is what weak alphas tell themselves. She almost laughed. It came out thin. Torin leaned forward, forearms on his knees. Marin, you disappear because you are skilled, not because you are less. The fire popped. She should have made a joke. Jokes kept balance. Jokes made intimacy easier to carry. But the forest was too quiet, and Torin had aimed the truth too cleanly. "You are very serious for a man with butterfly blackmail in my private folder," she said. His mouth softened when he recognized her humor returning. The warmth in his voice was more dangerous than any command. Marin closed the tablet and told him that one stayed. Torin had assumed as much. Marin said it was for morale. Torin asked whose morale. Marin answered that it was hers. He nodded gravely and promised to endure. The next morning, Torin brought her to the heart of Black Pine, not the dens, not the routes, not the places that could not be photographed. He brought her to a high meadow above the protected basin, where the grass shone with frost and the first sun touched the tips of the trees. Below them, the land opened in layers of green, silver, and blue. Marin did not raise the camera immediately. Torin noticed. Torin asked why there was no picture. Marin said not yet. He asked why. Marin said she was looking. He stood beside her. The air smelled of cold grass, wild sage, and the faint fur-warm scent of wolves moving somewhere far below. Birds began one by one, a jay, then a thrush, then the thin cry of a hawk. After a while, Torin said, "My grandfather moved the pack here after a mining survey exposed our old territory." Marin listened. "A photograph started it," he continued. "Not even a good one. A blurred wolf near a human door. People argued online for weeks. Cryptid hunters came first. Then men with guns. Then a developer who wanted the story more than the land." The morning light brightened. Marin's fingers tightened around the camera strap. "We left before blood," Torin said. "But leaving still took pieces from us. That is why every lens looks like a threat." Torin confirmed it. She nodded. He looked at her profile. "I should have told you sooner. You did not know if I was safe. I did not want you to be." That confession surprised her. Torin's gaze moved over the valley. "It is easier when outsiders are enemies. Then I can be only alpha, only guard, only teeth at the border. I am terrible for your workflow." Torin called her catastrophic for his workflow. She smiled. The meadow wind lifted a strand of hair across her cheek. Torin did not touch it. He waited until she tucked it back herself. That restraint, small as it was, undid her more than any dramatic vow would have. Marin lifted the camera at last. Below the ridge, a distant silver wolf moved through morning fog. Not Torin, one of his people. Far enough to be anonymous. Beautiful enough to tell the story. She framed the shot with trees, mist, and light. Then she lowered the camera. Torin turned and asked if the angle was wrong. Marin said it was not. He asked if the image was unsafe. She said it was not. Then he wanted to know why. Marin watched the wolf vanish. Some things are better witnessed than owned. Torin went very still. She felt his gaze on her, warm and careful. "That sounded like something I should say," he murmured. "You may use it later. Credit me." "Always." He said it too softly. Marin pretended to adjust her lens until her hands steadied. They built the final feature over the next week. It became less about wolves and more about presence. Tracks in mud, fur caught on bark, elk grazing without panic, a hawk cutting through dawn, a fox kit asleep beside old roots, distant silver shapes moving at the edge of fog, never close enough to betray thought behind the eyes. The working title changed from Rare Wolves of Black Pine to The Forest That Watches Back. Nadine complained for 14 minutes. Then she saw the full sequence and went silent. Marin sat on a rock with the satellite tablet balanced on her knees. Torin stood behind her, arms folded. He had become very good at pretending he did not care what Nadine thought. His left eyebrow betrayed him. Nadine finally called the result annoying. Marin waited. "It is better," Nadine admitted. "I hate when restraint is better." Torin's eyebrow lowered. Marin smiled and confirmed there would be no crew. "No crew," Nadine agreed, with great suffering. "But I want a launch event. Small. Conservation donors, magazine people, local trust representatives. Your mysterious landowner should attend." Torin's eyebrow rose again. Marin said the landowner disliked attention. The landowner owns thousands of photogenic acres and apparently a wolf population with cheekbones. He can survive one room. Marin glanced at Torin. He looked as if survival was not the issue. Murdering the room might be. Nadine continued. Also, tell him the magazine will honor all location restrictions. Legal is drafting the language. You were right about protecting the area. That mattered. Marin felt some knot in her chest loosen. After the call, Torin looked down at her. A launch event. Nadine promised it would be small. Torin understood that meant a room. Marin admitted that was likely. Torin added donors to the list. Marin admitted that was probable. He added magazine people, too. Marin admitted that part was unfortunate. He looked toward the ridge as if considering becoming permanently wild. Marin patted the rock beside her. You can stand near a potted plant and look tragic. Torin told her not to use that word. Marin revised the phrase to emotionally textured. Torin looked as if the revised phrase had injured him. Marin tried commercially viable. He walked away. She laughed until he came back with her tripod, because he was still her land representative and apparently doomed. The days before the event were full of practical comedy. They spent those days in a small rented workroom above the trust office. The Wi-Fi was slow, the coffee was brave, and the printer behaved like a wounded elk. The room overlooked the town's main street. Tourists wandered below with paper cups and souvenir sweatshirts. They never knew that an alpha king sat upstairs arguing over metadata while a beta photographer protected his hidden society with file names. Marin built the final archive like a fortress. Every image received 3 labels: public, restricted, or never. Public meant the magazine could publish it. Restricted meant the trust could use it for internal conservation work. Never meant the image had taught her something true, but would not leave her encrypted drive unless Torin approved it, or the mountain caught fire and needed evidence. Torin approved of never. He approved of it so much that Marin had to stop him from moving half the project into that category. The comedy of those sessions came from the fact that Torin treated captions like territorial borders. A comma in the wrong place made him suspicious. The phrase hidden life of wolves nearly caused a diplomatic crisis. The phrase secretive silverpack made him stand up and pace the room for 7 minutes. Marin replaced it with remote gray wolf population and watched him sit down like a man returning from war. Nadine, joining by video call from New York, suffered through the process with theatrical pain. She wanted romance in the captions. Marin wanted accuracy. Torin wanted the captions to reveal nothing except that trees existed and sometimes animals walked near them. At one point, Nadine suggested calling the main image The King in the Fog. Torin's face became so blank that Marin changed the title before the room lost power from sheer disapproval. They settled on Morning Watch. It was restrained. It was safe. It also made Nadine accuse them both of emotional vandalism. The workroom printer joined the rebellion on Thursday. It jammed while producing proof sheets, made a grinding sound, and spat out half of a wolf silhouette across 3 pages. Torin crouched before it with the grim focus of a predator studying prey. Marin warned him that alpha pressure did not work on office equipment. He informed her that office equipment had never been properly challenged. 5 minutes later, the printer flashed an error code. Marin photographed Torin holding the torn proof sheet while looking betrayed by technology. It went into the private folder beside the butterfly and the beaver pond image. By evening, the final sequence covered one long wall. Marin walked Torin through it in order. First came the human edge. Tasteful but clear boundary signs, boot tracks stopping before a protected zone, a drone warning reflected in rain. Then came the living forest: elk, fox, raptor, beaver, alpine flowers, and the porcupine inspector looking like a conservation official with quills. Last came the wolves, always distant, always anonymous, present enough to feel like guardians and absent enough to remain free. Torin stood before the sequence without speaking. Marin did not rush him. Outside, a delivery truck rattled over a pothole. Downstairs, someone laughed in the trust office. The room smelled of toner, coffee, wool jacket, and the faint wild cedar scent that followed Torin even indoors. Finally, he touched the edge of the proof, showing the fog ridge. Not the wolf, the empty space around it. He said the sequence felt like a door left closed but not locked. Marin understood exactly what he meant. That became the true final edit. Not secrecy as fear, not exposure as conquest. A door, visible enough to earn respect, closed enough to keep faith with those inside. Later, when Nadine sent the revised layout, Marin found her photographer note printed beside the opening spread. She had taken Torin's advice and added more of herself. She wrote about being a beta wolf who learned to disappear, then learned that invisibility could be both skill and hiding place. She did not name Wolf Society. She did not confess what humans could not know. She wrote it so that humans would read it as an artist's reflection and wolves would hear the truth beneath. Torin read it standing by the workroom window. His expression changed on the second paragraph. Marin pretended to organize memory cards while he finished. Her hands were steady only because she had trained them to be steady in worse places than small rooms with handsome alphas reading her honesty. When he lowered the page, he did not praise her first. That would have been easier. Instead, he said she had written herself into the frame. Marin felt the words land. That was what he had been asking of her all along. Not to become loud. Not to stop being careful. Only to stop erasing herself from the evidence. Torin revised his public statement too. His first draft was pure landowner granite. It thanked the trust, praised conservation partnerships, and said nothing that could not have been carved into a tasteful plaque. Marin read it twice, then wrote functional but dead at the top. Torin looked personally wounded. She made him try again. The second draft mentioned that protecting wild places required listening to people who saw what others missed. It acknowledged that Black Pine had benefited from Marin's restraint and skill. It stopped short of romance, but it opened the door. Marin approved it. Torin asked if she was giving him a gold star. She told him he had not yet earned stationery. He accepted this with solemn disappointment, then bought a sheet of star stickers from the general store while pretending they were for his cousin's children. The cousin found out. By sunset, half the pack knew. By dinner, someone had stuck a gold star to Torin's field jacket. He wore it for 23 minutes before noticing. Marin laughed so hard she had to sit on the workroom floor. Torin removed the sticker with royal care, placed it on the edge of her laptop, and informed her that morale systems were contagious. She left it there. Torin had to approve captions. He objected to any phrase that made wolves sound mystical, seductive, lonely, dangerous, noble, secretive, or emotionally intelligent. Marin pointed out that this left gray and present. Torin argued that gray and present was accurate. It is also a passport description. He allowed elusive after 20 minutes of debate. He rejected majestic. Nadine added majestic back in a caption and blamed the copy desk. Torin threatened the copy desk. Marin did not pass along the threat. The magazine requested a short photographer note. Marin wrote about patience, invisibility, and the discipline of not taking every image the world offers. Torin read the draft twice. He did not comment until she packed the tablet away. "You did not mention yourself enough," he said. Marin said the note was not about her. Torin reminded her that it was her note. Marin said it was about the work. Torin said the work came from her. She looked at him. He had been doing that lately, noticing when she edited herself down. It was unnerving, sweet, inconvenient, like finding a wildflower growing through a camera case. Marin agreed to revise it. Torin approved. Marin called him bossy. Torin called himself correct. Marin said the two were often confused. Torin said they were confused by her. That was fair. On the last night in the field, Marin returned to the original pine. The blind had been packed. The ropes were gone. Only a faint scuff on the bark showed where the whole ridiculous story had begun. Torin came with her. He did not ask why. The squirrel was there. Of course it was. It sat on the same branch, plump with stolen food and legal authority. It looked at Marin, then at Torin, then flicked its tail. Marin nodded and called it the inspector. Torin stared up at the animal. "That is the squirrel? The one who judged my breakfast." Torin said it had poor manners. "You tried to steal my camera under this tree." Torin defended his camera theft as security concerns. Marin said the squirrel had breakfast concerns. The squirrel dropped a pine cone. It landed 2 feet from Torin's boot. Marin lifted both brows and announced that the squirrel had ruled. Torin looked at the cone. I protect this entire territory. Marin said he apparently did not protect it from audit. He looked at her, and the moonlight caught the reluctant amusement in his eyes. You find allies everywhere. Marin said she found only competent allies. The forest around them was soft with night. Crickets sang in the grass. Pine resin warmed under the lingering heat of the day. Above the ridge, stars came out with alpine sharpness. Torin's voice lowered. After the launch, will you leave? Marin had expected the question. It still struck her. Marin said she had assignments. Of course. Nepal in September, wetlands in October, maybe Alaska in winter if Nadine stops using emotional blackmail. Torin asked about Black Pine. She looked at the tree, the branch, the shadowed clearing. She thought of the image she had deleted. She thought of the images she had kept. She thought of Torin standing too close to flowers, carrying her blind through water, and learning not to command when asking mattered more. Black Pine could be ongoing, she said. His stillness changed. Professionally? Partly. Marin. There was her name again, not as command. As a place he had finally learned how to approach, she turned to him. I do not want to be collected as a pack asset. Never. I do not want instinct used as a shortcut. Torin agreed without hesitation. I do not want to become another secret hidden in the trees. Torin's face softened in the moonlight. Then do not. Stand where you choose. Leave when you choose. Return when you choose. Marin said that sounded very reasonable. Torin admitted the reasonableness pained him. She laughed, but it came out tender. He stepped closer, stopping at a distance that asked instead of claimed. I want you here because you want to be here. Not because my wolf recognized you. Not because the pack approves. Not because the land is safer with you, though it is. Very strategic romance. Torin said he was trying. Marin said she could tell. He looked toward the tree and then back at her. May I ask badly? Marin said that depended on how badly he asked. Will you come back to Black Pine, Marin Larkspur? For the work, for the forest, and for me. The squirrel made a small noise overhead, as if taking minutes. Marin smiled up at it. Do not rush me. Torin's mouth curved. I would not dare. She looked at him. Yes. The word was quiet. The forest did not explode into music. The moon did not become larger. No ancient bond wrapped around her ribs. There was only Torin letting out a breath he had been holding. Marin realized that being seen could feel like safety when the person looking knew how to leave the door open. He did not kiss her until she stepped closer. When he did, it was gentle, warm, careful enough to make her chest ache. His hands stayed at her waist, loose and respectful. The kiss tasted like mountain cold, coffee, and the strange sweetness of a story neither of them had planned. Above them, the squirrel dropped another pine cone. It hit Torin's shoulder. Marin broke the kiss, laughing. Torin looked up slowly. I am beginning to dislike that animal. Marin defended the squirrel as having range. Torin called it treason. You say that about many things. Many things commit treason. She leaned into him and laughed again, because romance was better when it had witnesses with terrible timing. The launch event took place in Denver 2 weeks later. Nadine had promised small. Nadine's definition of small included a gallery, donors, magazine executives, trust representatives, 2 conservation reporters, 3 people wearing scarves indoors, and 1 caterer who asked whether wolves preferred past appetizers. Marin stood near the entrance in a dark green dress and wished briefly for a tree blind. The photographs glowed on the walls. Mist, tracks, wings, eye shine at the edge of woods. A distant silver shape crossing a ridge, more question than animal. The forest that watches back looked restrained, mysterious, and alive. It did not betray Black Pine. Torin arrived 10 minutes late, which was rude until Marin saw why. He had brought 2 elders from the pack, both disguised as donors. He had also brought 1 russet-haired cousin who wore a suit with the pained look of a wolf trapped in upholstery. Torin himself wore a dark suit and no tie. His hair was neat, his expression was controlled. His eyes found Marin across the room and warmed before he could stop them. Nadine appeared beside Marin with a champagne glass. "That is the landowner?" Marin confirmed Nadine's question. Nadine lost professional composure for a moment. "Professional tone, Nadine. I am being professional. Professionally, he looks like he personally negotiated winter." Torin reached them in time to hear the last word. Marin watched his face. He had become better at surviving editorial language, but only slightly. Nadine held out a hand. Nadine called her. "I have been trying to exploit your wolf population responsibly." Torin shook her hand. "Torin Ashgard, I have been trying to prevent that." Nadine laughed. "I like him. He is under review," Marin said. Torin looked down at her. "Still?" Marin told Torin he was always under review. His eyes warmed again. Nadine looked between them. Her editor instincts stirred like a shark-smelling plot. Oh. Marin stopped Nadine before she could start. Nadine protested that she had not said anything. Marin said Nadine's eyebrows had. Torin looked at Nadine's eyebrows with new suspicion. The evening unfolded better than Marin expected. Guests admired the restraint. Conservation donors praised the ethics. A reporter asked why there were no close wolf portraits, and Marin explained that some distance was part of the story. Torin stood beside her during that answer, silent but visibly affected. Then someone asked the question. It came from a silver-haired donor with clever eyes. She stood before the largest image, where a distant wolf shape watched from fog. "Miss Larkspur," the donor said, "why do I feel this animal is looking at someone specific?" The room turned. Marin felt Nadine inhale. She felt Torin beside her, still and warm. The safe answer waited on her tongue. Projection. Light. Composition. Animal curiosity. Torin spoke first. Perhaps because the photographer is worth looking at carefully. The room softened with interest. Marin turned to him. He did not look at the crowd. He looked at her. No wolf title, no ancient claim, no secret exposed. Just a man in a public room, choosing to be seen while he saw her. Nadine's eyebrows attempted a full press release. The donor smiled. Marin could have deflected. She had built an entire career on moving unseen through dangerous spaces. Instead, she let herself stand still. "Some subjects teach the photographer restraint," she said. "Some teach her courage." Torin offered his hand at his side. Not high, not theatrical, just open. Marin took it. The room understood enough. Not everything, enough. Nadine whispered, "I knew the wolf was romantic." Torin heard her. His jaw tightened. Marin squeezed his hand once, partly for comfort and partly to keep him from making publishing history. Later, on the gallery balcony, the city lights spread below them like fallen stars. Cool air moved over Marin's bare arms. Torin draped his jacket around her shoulders before she could protest, then looked faintly worried that the gesture was too possessive. She kept the jacket. Torin observed that the moment had been public. Marin agreed. Torin asked if it had been too public. Marin said it had not. He asked if it had not been public enough. She laughed. "Do not become an overachiever." He leaned on the balcony rail beside her. Too late. Inside the gallery, Nadine's voice rose. She was telling someone that the silver wolf had narrative tension. The russet cousin was eating appetizers with the relief of a man finally rewarded for wearing shoes. Marin looked at the city, then at Torin. "You did not expose anything." Torin agreed that he had not. "But you still told the truth." "I am learning from a careful person." "Dangerous habit." Torin said he had several dangerous habits now. She smiled. "Name one." He looked at her with a softness that would have made Nadine unbearable if she had seen it. "Coming back when you call." Marin's throat tightened. "I do not always call." Marin knew she did not always call. "Sometimes I disappear." Torin promised to look for her respectfully. Marin teased him about his terrible anti-camouflage skills. Torin corrected that to improving skills, moderate skills, cruel woman. She laughed, and he smiled like he had earned it. Her satellite phone buzzed inside the borrowed jacket pocket. Marin checked the screen. Nadine. From inside the building. She answered. Nadine's voice came in a whisper that was somehow still dramatic. I need one more thing. Marin looked through the glass doors. Nadine stood 20 feet away, pretending to study a photograph while calling her. Marin refused before Nadine finished. You do not know what I am asking. Still no. Can we get one clean, close portrait of the silver wolf for subscribers? Tasteful, ethical, no coordinates, maybe just the face. Torrin's hearing caught every word. His expression became winter. Marin looked at him. The silver wolf is not available, Nadine sighed. What if we offer creative control? Torrin shook his head once. Marin covered the phone. Left profile, Dawn Light, you brush first. He stared at her. Private archive, she added. His eyes narrowed. For morale? Marin claimed the private portrait would be for art. Torrin found that worse. Nadine whispered through the phone. Is he negotiating with the wolf? Marin uncovered the speaker and denied it. Torrin looked at the city for 3 long seconds. Then he asked, with the quiet suffering of a king defeated by love and composition, What time is dawn? Marin's laugh startled a couple inside the gallery. Nadine made a sound of triumph. Private, Torrin warned. Marin ended the call. Private. Torrin requested no squirrel. Marin admitted she could not control the squirrel. Torrin accused her of communicating with it. Professionally. He sighed. She leaned into his side, still wearing his jacket, still holding his hand, still free to step away and choosing not to. Below them, the city moved in bright human lines. Beyond it, unseen in the dark, the mountains waited. Torrin turned his face toward her. Come back to Black Pine tomorrow. Marin asked if he meant for the work. Torrin said for the forest. Marin prompted him for the rest. His mouth curved. For me. Marin looked at the man who had tried to steal her camera, failed at standing in shadows, survived a butterfly, and learned to ask instead of claim. Marin said she would. Inside, Nadine shouted something about cover strategy. Somewhere in Black Pine, a squirrel was probably preparing a deposition. Torrin lowered his forehead to Marin's temple with a quiet laugh. The story would go on. Not as exposure. Not as possession. As a careful image, held in trust. And this time, Marin did not need a camera to prove it was real. Thank you for listening. If this story grabbed your heart, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss our next story. We'll see you in the next one.